Hello, everyone, and welcome to PWD Allies podcast. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. Today, joining me is Neil Matheson from Surrey, British Columbia. Hi, Neil.
Hello.
And I'm coming to you from the capital region of British Columbia, Victoria, BC, not too far from the BC legislature, where I go from time to time to go and sit into proceedings and see what's going on out there. And also joining me are my two great guests that have had on before several times, and always lovely to have them joining me again, is Shane Simpson and Michael Prince. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Hey, good, Brett. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good to
well,
see you too.
well, you
Yeah,
know what? Just before we launch into it, I just wanted to give context is that you two were last on together back in the first year. So that was 2023.
mhm.
And then Michael,
So
you came on again last year with BC Ants. Yeah, like Neil Belanger. So
Oh, yeah.
it was
yeah,
you and Neil last year, and so we haven't had Shane on for a while since 2023. So we wanted to have you both on again. We call you to the dynamic duo.
the dynamic
So
duo.
the
Love that.
dynamic duo returns.
I,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how dynamic we are, but a couple of old guys.
We're a duo.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I didn't know if do we want to talk about the Canada Disability Benefit and how it's not
Yeah, definitely. What a mess that Canada Disability Benefit is.
Mhm.
Wow. I mean, we're almost getting closer to the end of 2025. I mean, halfway through December already, and
Hmm.
it still was not even up to the original the announcement that it was supposed to be launched at, and it's federal government's just dragging their heels as much as they can on it. And so, Michael,
Yep.
what are you hearing about this?
Well, just to remind your viewers, Brent, we were waiting for because of the spring election in Canada. We normally would have had a federal budget, in March or April. Of course, we didn't. So it was much anticipated a fall budget, which we finally saw. People in the disability community, of course, have been pushing since the budget of 2023 for something significant as a major investment in tackling poverty for people with disabilities, low income. Disappointed in the 2024 budget. So there's big hopes. It really didn't figure in the federal election. A lot of issues didn't figure in the federal
No.
election. As you know, that was about Mark Carney, Donald Trump, and other bigger issues which dominated the campaign. But in the budget, uh, yeah, a further disappointment, as you say, Brent. No increase in the monthly amounts. The maximum monthly amount of $200 remains that. Of course, most Canadians won't, who are eligible, will not get the $200. They'll get an amount less than that. There was also hope that the eligibility would be expanded. The sole reliance on the disability tax credit, the DTC, is the
Mm.
one and only doorway to this program. Was a huge frustration for the community, as you know. Not
Mhm.
a single disability group in the country called for that. I think some groups said, well, if you're going to use the DTC, for goodness sakes, complement it with other doorways or gateways to accessing the new disability benefit. They could have used the Canada Pension Plan Disability Program, veterans eligibility. There's a number of programs, or just said if you qualify already for a provincial social assistance disability program, which Shane had the honor of overseeing and expanding here in our province, uh, make that automatic enrollment.
Mhm.
If they've qualified through a process in a province to be deemed eligible, just automatically expedite it, make it a simple, clean administrative process. There's not a hint of that in this budget. What there is a band-aid on a bad decision that was made, a paltry one-time $150 reimbursement for people
Mhm.
who will incur costs in applying for the DTC. So there's an admission on the government, I think, that a lot of low-income Canadians with disabilities face financial barriers. One of them will be to access a health practitioner who will then be able
Yeah.
to help them complete the medical portion of the application. And by and large, there's a fee attached to that by most physicians and other health practitioners. So the government of Canada has come up with this $150 one-time amount for people who wait to get certified for the DTC or who get to recertify. So as you know, some people who qualify, their qualification lapses or gets reviewed by Canada Revenue Agency, and then they have to re-qualify. So the government's come up with this really, I would say, back-assed Band-Aid, which really is just an admission that it was a bad policy design decision in the first place to rely solely on the DTC to get access to the Canada Disability Benefit. So this is just the latest chapter, as you say, Brent, in a message that the government of Canada is not listening to the disability community and not really responding to, some pressing needs, and particularly this time of the year. This is a sad commentary that this is. I think one last comment I'll stop on is clearly the Carney government has a very different agenda. It's focused very much on trade and economics, national defense. You have to wonder how social programs generally will figure in a Carney government. I guess we got a hint in this budget. Regrettably, I think for a lot of Canadians with disabilities, this is a sad case of deja vu, of feeling yet again overlooked or kind of marginalized and struggling to find a place on the national agenda, which to some extent they had during some of the Trudeau years. I'm not going to say the entire decade, but there's a feeling, I think, of great disappointment, but also concern about and maybe Shane's got some insight on this, how could the disability community get back on the radar of national political parties or on policy agendas, certainly in Ottawa. There's a feeling right now that they've slipped right off. So I'll just stop there.
Well, I was going to say, Shane, like you were a former Minister of Disabilities here in BC. And what's your opinion that there's no minister federally now in Canada? It's a bad look, right? It's a bad look.
Almost definitely.
It is a bad look, and the reality is that federally, I think sadly, what priority there was kind of went out the door when Carla Qualtrough lost the position as disability minister. Carla has a disability herself. She very much was pretty impassioned about trying to make some improvements, including the national legislation, and then trying to do things. And I know, and I spent a little bit of time, I was still in the minister's office when she was there, and we looked at ways to collaborate. But when she was moved out of that position, whatever priority it had kind of dissolved with her, quite honestly. And I think, as Michael says, the challenging time that we're facing right now is you have a federal government that is very focused on the economy and trade and its relationship with Trump and how that relationship evolves. And social programs have simply kind of fallen to the back burner. You're also seeing as the federal government reallocates funding so that it can dramatically increase defense spending, more investment into the economy, into protecting workers to some degree from Trump and tariffs. All of that understandable, but the price is being paid on the social side, and we know that persons with disabilities often face that first and foremost. And I think that that's a reality that we have now, and the challenge is going to be to how to change that scenario. And a big part of that, I think, is to have as much collaboration and coordination among disability groups and their allies at the federal level, so that they can speak with one voice and make a decision about kind of what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that are the first priority, and try to move those forward, just to, as Michael said, just to get back on the radar. Because right now, social issues really are on the back burner as far as the federal government goes, and that's tough because While they don't deliver a lot of direct programs, federal dollars are incredibly important to deliver other programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like the transfer payments to the provinces and territories are crucial in getting the proper financial services, and also removing barriers. Barriers to accessing the program too. I love what you mentioned there, Shane. It's having Carla Cointreau when she was initially there. She was proud to stand by the Canada Disability Benefit at the beginning, right? It's I think her intention was that she really cared a lot. That she really wanted to get that out there. It was her. It was her baby, basically. Getting that out there to help people. Lift them out of
And
poverty.
and I think that she yeah, and I believe that Carla had great hopes that it
Mhm.
would be a more significant benefit, more than $200, that it would be easier to access for people, those things that the disability community was calling for.
Yeah.
I think it was her hope to be able to make more progress on that rather than what we face today.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't happening.
They just missed a zero on the end of that 200. That's all.
Well,
Just a zero.
They miss-
Michael, last time you were on the show with Neil Belanger last year, you talked about the CDB being a gut punch,
Yeah.
and that was your word. Is it was a gut
Yeah.
punch, and
Yeah.
I believe it was a gut punch for Carla Qualtrill too. Like I believe that she was totally snowed,
Yeah.
just like you and
Yeah.
Neil were. You
Well,
know.
just to add to what Shane said, when the cabinet was shuffled in the June or July, I think it was 2023, and Carla got shuffled out of her position. Shane's 100% correct in my view. That was the beginning of the end of
Mhm.
of the high
Yeah.
hopes, and cabinet lost a clear voice. Um, and clearly, my view was the Prime Minister's office and the finance department officials, um, they were pleased to see Carla moved out, because what it did was it allowed them then to kind of recalibrate what the parameters were around the vision for the
Mhm.
Canada Disability Benefit, and downgraded it both in terms of monthly amount and accessibility of how many Canadians would actually qualify for it. So, if you go back and read some of the speeches that Carla Qualtrough was making as the minister in the House of Commons in the
Yeah.
spring of 2023 and even earlier, she was trying to, benchmark, or, you know, flag, the aspirations and the goals. And I think at some
Mhm.
point, she was talking about lifting hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty in a
Mhm.
pretty short time. I mean, to make that work, or to give those words meaning, would have been a far more robust monthly amount, as Shane said. I heard that when the budget was rolled out, people in the department, Employment and Social Development Canada, that was not their number either. I mean, the number that they had submitted, even under a different minister, after Carla was gone, had more ambition. It had been
Mhm.
rolled back from Carla's vision, but even that vision got further rolled back by
Mhm.
people in the Prime Minister's office and finance. And so, yeah, the $200, I thought it was a typo
Yeah.
Yeah.
when I first
Yeah.
read the budget. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I think Shane picks up on a good point. The movement itself has to kind of dust itself off, and really focus on one or two key priorities. It's easy to go and meet a minister like when Shane was a minister and have a Christmas list of 28 things. Well, the minister
Yeah.
says, "Look, I've got 15 or 20 people, cabinet colleagues. We're all going to ask the finance minister or treasury board for money for this group or for that group. You got to focus. You got to give me a
Yeah.
clear one or two, and
Yeah.
and you've got to really have a groundswell of support out there that helps me move that message. And right now, I think quite frankly, the movement's in shock. And I've heard people say, Shane, who've been in the business of lobbying and aspiring for a better inclusive Canada for 30, 35 years, saying uh, that this has been the bleakest time in Ottawa since the Carney pivot and just before the budget of 2024. So you're getting some old veterans who are kind of scratching their heads saying, uh,
Mhm.
we don't know how to get traction again. And so there may be a period of where there is, as Shane said, an opportunity for groups to get together, strategize, get a clear sense of their one or two top, and figure out a message that reconnects the Canadians. Because, right now there's this discussion around defense. People are feeling more nationalistic, and as Shane said too, importantly, and I want to acknowledge this, the government is providing funding to protect workers and some businesses as they did during COVID. Those are important sort of social protection functions of the government of Canada.
Mhm.
They've got the pockets to do it that a lot of provinces can't. So I want to acknowledge that. But after that, there's got to be, we had these problems and challenges before Trump. We still got them. It's like we had problems before COVID. We've got them still after.
Exactly.
And, so these are systemic issues. How do we reconnect to both the public, policymakers, and their parties? We're in a transition right now, but I think take that time to really regroup and refocus.
Yeah.
And I think, I think that there really needs to be that conversation in the sector. And I don't know what discussions are going on. It may be happening for all I know, but the sector does need to get down and make a determination about what are the 1 or 2, 3 things that are achievable that will make it better, and focus on that. Because I certainly know in my time as minister, whenever people came in with a shopping list and said, we've got 12 things on our list that government has to do, the first thing that told me was, this group doesn't know what its priorities are.
Yeah.
And because if they got a dozen things, now they come in and say, we got 2 things or 3 things, and we're going to push those, and we're not letting go of those until we see some progress. The opportunity, the possibility of success is much greater, I believe. And also, you're trying to educate politicians and bureaucrats on these issues. You're never going to educate them on 12 things. You might be able to educate them on 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And that's what we can talk about, Brent, is that we always talk about like probably the biggest problem with a lot of the disability advocacy groups is that a lot can't come to some sort of mutual agreement on things. Like there's always kind of infighting, like you're arguing for this, why are you arguing for this, and you should get for this. And so there's a lot of tension between advocacy groups, and it doesn't really serve it. It's really destructive, and I think in some ways, federally and provincially across the country, governments kind of depend on there being a disconnect, because it's like, well, if they're fighting amongst themselves, then it's something, kind of takes the heat off us, maybe, right? But
and one of the hot topics, regarding persons with disabilities, I mean, in BC and across Canada, I mean, and people in low income, I mean, seniors, is having a fixed amount for rent. I mean, that's a huge hot topic these days, is the affordability of finding affordable housing. Now, Shane, like since you were a former minister, like I've mentioned to the current minister before about this in different meetings and over time, but I just wanted your overview, and even Michael, I mean, you could maybe chime into this too, but having rent geared to income for persons with disabilities in the market sector and market housing, like right now the BC provincial government has 2 programs. One, which Shane, you'd be familiar with, is the SAFERS program for seniors, and then also the RAP, which is the rental assistance program. Having the rental assistance program extended over to PWD and market housing, because right now they don't get that. They just get the shelter rate. It's based on their shelter rate, under courtesy support and shelter. If they're in subsidized housing, it doesn't, it's already rent geared to income, so they automatically get that. What would be, do you think that would be easy to do? I know that there's probably a lot of dollar amounts that are probably attached to that, I would think, in order to make that happen, but it would keep people housed. It would give them more opportunity to find housing within the market sector, where I know that the BC government's building a lot of housing, like they, through contractors, and they're making progress. But also within market housing, people with disabilities, and they're probably closer to like accessible like for shopping, medical appointments and stuff. For BC housing, you might be, but might not be, or you might be closer to family in market housing. So, what is your guy? I'll start with you, Shane, first, and then Michael will get to your take on it too.
Well, housing is a huge challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge challenge because we don't have enough social housing.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is the market is what it is. And the market is challenging for people, who are making $20 an hour, let alone people who are living on PWD.
Mm-hmm.
And so how you get around that? I do think, though, that there's absolutely an appreciation and understanding in government that I think, about the importance of housing. And if you want to help people address their other issues, you got to know where you're going to hang your hat at the end of the day, in a safe, secure place, if you're going to deal with other challenges you might have, whether it's a disability and the complexity of your disability, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's an addiction issue, whether it's just being poor. And so I think that has to continue to be an area. And if I was going to, pick a couple of areas to focus on, housing would be one, because there's an acknowledgement, I think, among people and about how challenging it is to find affordability. And politically, one of the positive things about that is people who aren't on PWD understand that as well, because there's lots of people with modest working incomes who are facing those same struggles, figuring out, where can I find a place to live? Do I need a roommate? Am I going back home to my parents because that's what I have available? So I do think there's got to be a way to look at how do you provide that subsidy. The challenge is in market housing. I don't think you're going to find many governments that are going to restrict market housing costs in a way that make that work. Because as we know, I mean, even if things get to the point where you could go find a 2-bedroom for $1,500 or $1,600, and you can't today. But if you could, that'd still be out of the range of a lot of people. So it's just one of the very toughest problems to deal with. And, I think in many ways it's almost, everybody wants rate increases in that, and I fully get that. But if you could solve the housing problem or make it better, that would be very obviously a huge step forward. I think that there's people who have spent a lot of time, whether it's in the nonprofit housing association, the co-op folks, advocates, and there's conversations, numerous ones that have gone on, but it's probably time to reinitiate that discussion about where should government investment in housing go? Who do they target? Who do they leave to the private sector to deal with? How do you use government land, which is probably the way to bring costs down most easily, is the land that housing gets built on. But it's a big conversation, and sadly the reality of that is, with the time it takes to build housing, it means there's no resolution out there. Even if we came up with a good idea today, it'd be years before you'd actually see it, because that's how long it takes to get things built.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the huge problem. It's I mean, the housing affordability. I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, person be lucky if they find a place for $1,600 for a two-bedroom. I mean, you're probably well over 2,000. I mean, where I live right now, I mean, there's one going for $2,200 for a 2-bedroom, and and then all they do is just slap a coat of paint on, change the lock, and call it a day, right? I mean, flip it over. But I mean, a full PWD check for persons with disabilities in BC, $1,483.50. I mean, that doesn't even pay for a 1-bedroom
Yeah.
in most communities. So, either having them have access to subsidized housing, either in the private or public sector, I think that would be the solution, and just get everybody housed and get them the services and the that they need. Like you mentioned, Shane, there's so many dynamics of for either they're in poverty, or there's an addiction, or there's their disabilities, multiple disabilities. There's so many dynamics that have to be kind of focused and looked at. But housing, yes, that would, my view, would be the number one thing that would be to look at. I guess there's no easy solution of that. I know that, like, some of my friends that used to live just a couple doors down from where I live, they moved to Winnipeg, but they were in market housing, but they are actually under like another, I guess, a government program that they had a caseworker who came in once a month and make sure everything was running smoothly for them. And but it was just they had family in another province. They moved to Manitoba, but I was sad that they moved, right?
And part of the challenge there, Brent, is that I know, and I look at this now because, as you know, I chair Community Living BC, and housing is a huge issue. We've got almost 30,000 people, and 19,000 of them live at home.
Oh, wow.
And lots of them want to be there, but for lots of them, they want to be independent and they want to get out on their own, but making it happen is challenging. And we've been able to identify some rent subsidy supports, but it's limited, and there's only so many of them, and there's not nearly enough to meet the need. It's not even close.
Exactly.
Well, I wanted to maybe get Michael's opinion, and you can chime in as well, Shane. But like we've talked about too, like, would it be a solution to get rid of the shelter portion and just make one check? Would that be a solution? Yes or no?
Yes, it would help.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you say, Michael?
Yeah.
Well, I remember talking to this when Shane and I had different jobs 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, I think Shane's been very clear both when he was minister and when he was critic, and since he's out of politics again in government. Some provinces they've blended, others it's specific. Manitoba actually has an interesting rent assist program that was brought in by an NDP government there a number of years ago. I just want to just add again the federal perspective here. So in September, the Carney government did announce what they're calling Build Canada Homes. It's a new federal agency. He's got a new one on defense procurement. He's setting up 2 or 3 new agencies, which is interesting that he's not relying solely on CMHC and other existing federal agencies. But and this is to build 2 or 3 goals. One is to tackle homelessness by, and it'll be interesting to watch what this actually means for a province like BC and disability communities. Expanding transitional and supportive housing, in partnership with provinces and municipalities. Another phrase they used in the budget recently was that to build deeply affordable community and co-op housing for low-income households. So that to me goes, okay, the community needs to zero in on that and look at what does that mean, and what does it mean for a province like BC that was one of the ones historically through the 90s and through the 2000s remained committed to social housing in this country. Most governments walked away in the 90s, including the federal government. BC did not, but we still have a backlog. We have some challenges there, but so there's a commitment here. As Shane said, this takes time. You just don't turn on a tap and it starts to flow. We're talking land acquisition and preparation and approvals and construction, et cetera, et cetera. But and there's a commitment to a great acceleration of non-market housing in this country by governments and the current. So this is a place where, again, I should qualify what I said earlier. This is a place where there's a possibility that social policy at the federal level is still alive. It's embedded within this more of an infrastructure conversation. The the key for the disability sector is to make sure that when people say build baby build or build faster, that we don't build congregated, segregated housing again. So again, people in the intellectual developmental community are very alive to this concern that when governments start talking about, well, we're going to build 400 units here or 300 units here, there's a worry that people either will not get included or they'll be segregated. And so, and kind of almost reinstitutionalizing in a backward way. So we need to have that conversation. So it seems to me there is an opportunity, but to take time. But it's a good back to Shane's earlier point. Is this one of the 1 or 2 top priorities or 3 top priorities at this moment in Canada? The disability sector collectively could say, yeah, affordable housing, inclusive housing, an expansion of non-market, in particular co-op, nonprofit, etc. We have organizations like Inclusion Canada through its associations. They own a fair bit of real estate across the country. So does the Kiwanis and Lions. We've got a lot of service clubs that are sitting on some real estate, as well as Crown land. We have a lot of public land. But again, there's an opportunity here to see what's achievable. How do we educate the bureaucrats and the politicians? And provincially, how do we make sure that, and the Premier's been very good at that, the BC gets its fair share of these national federal initiatives. And so this housing one on Build Canada Homes, this new federal agency, I don't know much about it. It's just been announced back in September. But it seems to me there's a new window there of possibility that also with some risks, as I say, around segregation, but some possibilities of partnering and getting dollars flowing. As Shane said, Ottawa doesn't deliver a lot, but it does have purse strings. And this is another case where both federal land and federal transfers could be very important.
And I think your point's well taken.
That's a good topic on that, because if you get people more into subsidized or like social housing, subsidized housing, either co-op builds or any type of housing sector like that, the more money that they're going to have in their pocket, then they can put that money back locally to help local businesses. They can buy more healthy food. They could put, just better their well-being in so many ways. And it puts less strain on our healthcare system too, right? Because if people are putting more money into market housing and feeding the big corporations, right? They don't need the money. I mean, it's keeping their shareholders happy. And as long as you can pay your rent. But from what I'm hearing, like, I've got a couple, neighbors who live in actually the same company that I rent from, but it's managed by a different management company. And they have a lot of people in that building that are PWD. And what I'm hearing, Shane and Michael, is they would love to have like subsidized housing. But again, some of the programs can get extended over to their building. Like you mentioned, Shane, that you're the chair for CLBC, but like some of them do get the care in their building through that program, which is awesome. And they've got seniors in the building under SAFERS. And from what I'm hearing, this is an overall view, is they're saying that, just make it more unified and get rid of that. I like what you said, to get rid of the shelter. And that's what I'm hearing too. Like, get rid of that damn shelter. And I said, I know, right? So
I think it would simplify things, right? I mean, it would just create one less hurdle.
Yeah. Well, it does a couple of things. One is I always thought that the shelter support was a bit of a red herring, because, the reality is people get a check every month and then they figure out how to manage their life with whatever money they have. And and the thing that, of course, the shelter portion did that was challenging is that if you had no fixed address, then you didn't get that portion, or you didn't get most of it. And that was a challenge as well. And so I think that is there. But getting back on the housing and the federal government a little bit, I know that, as Michael said, most of the provinces walked away from housing largely when the federal government, I think it was Martin, Paul Martin was the prime minister of the day, kind of essentially canceled the housing programs. And they brought them back. Trudeau brought them back to some degree, but not much. And 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 now Carney has made a lot of noise about enhancing housing and putting significant money in.
Yep.
I do think that if you're going to pick one to go, because that's where the federal government can play a role, and
Yeah.
it's money.
Yeah.
And absolutely, it could. The federal government turned around tomorrow and said, British Columbia, we've got X hundreds of millions, $1 billion for you. Let's develop a program that supports people. There would be a conversation to be had about what that looked like pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and if you say it's going to be in the private sector, that's okay. If you're providing some kind of support and subsidy and saying the private sector may build that housing as well. I'm a big co-op fan, but we know how long it takes for those things to happen. This is a time we have a new housing minister that knows BC pretty well, and Gregor Robertson.
Yes.
Was the mayor of Vancouver. He was the mayor who said when he was first elected mayor, he was going to end homelessness. He didn't, but it wasn't because he didn't try. I mean, I think he made some serious efforts. It just wasn't there to be done. But he has some sense of that. He also, I heard him speaking, I think, in the House of Commons in response to question period or whatever, and talked about how, the target social housing was going to be part of that focus. So this would be the time, certainly for the disability community, if they had an idea about kind of what a subsidy or a support might look like, early thinking, to find an opportunity to sit down with Minister Robertson, who knows our province and knows these issues as well as anybody probably sitting in that cabinet, and have a conversation about what might this look like. And at least you'll find two things. Either he will be receptive and you'll have some things to talk about, or you'll begin to learn that maybe there isn't a plan there. But I would be, if there was a series of groups coming together around disability housing, I would be looking for an opportunity to meet with Minister Robertson and have a conversation about what his vision is for how to get at supporting people.
Yeah, I like the idea of co-op housing too, Shane. I had an old friend who used to live in a co-op housing, and they said it's really great. It says that gives you that community feel of being belonging within your compound. There's a lot, I guess, that goes into how to be part of that co-op housing. But I mean, one of my next door neighbors is a co-op housing actually. So I could look out my window and the building's right there. And so, I mean, they're everywhere in like different communities, just not as much as they used to be. And there should be more, I think, more of a variety. I guess one other topic that I would like to dive into, I just wanted to get both your views on it is, the crisis supplement, Shane, under MSDPR, where you basically you can ask for a crisis supplement. I think once a year you can get a clothing supplement, and I think now you can actually ask once a month to get a crisis supplement of like $50. What is your view? I mean, when you were former minister, I mean, it was in place there, but now apparently you can actually ask for it once a month, but there's a lot of strings attached to getting that crisis supplement. I mean, having it on the check automatically so that you don't have to go and ask for that money. I mean, would that make more sense?
It feels like it's like, please, sir, can I have some more?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Neil.
I was just gonna say, like that Oliver Twist or whatever it is, with the porridge, please, sir, can I have some more?
Can I have seconds, please?
If and at the provincial level, and I think we all recognize that provincial finances are more challenging than they were a few years ago. That's a reality.
Yeah.
The government made a commitment, that they weren't going to efficiencies were not going to be established on the backs of the most vulnerable. And in terms of not cutting back, I think that they've fulfilled that. I certainly know when I look at the budgets that we have at CLBC, nobody's asking us to reduce our funding in areas around service delivery. We're being a little more efficient on the admin side, but not looking to cut anything. So, and I think that you saw it with Minister Malcolmson, the changes, the spousal benefit changes.
Yes, yes.
that recently happened. These are the kind of things, and we've seen some other changes. I made a few, but I know Minister Simon, Minister Malcolmson have also advanced that. The area around how these crisis grants get given, that's an area too where there's
Mhm.
organizations in the disability community that understand those things very well.
Yeah.
And those might be areas actually to have more conversation with the government about
Mhm.
how to improve the effectiveness of those programs, how to
Mhm.
reduce
Mm.
bureaucracy around them, while still staying accountable,
Mhm.
and what that might look like. Because those are areas where progress um, maybe can be made. And I know there's a willingness to look at those things for sure. And and so I
I'm wondering if you paid
think
your cable
your
your cable bill, Shane.
point,
You're st
Is he
well,
frozen
well,
or?
you're frozen a little bit, Shane. Did you pay your
well
cable bill this month?
taken, Brent, that there
Yeah.
may be a kind of how do you start that discussion?
Uh,
Um, back.
Oh, it was
I'm
just
seeing
cutting out.
Michael
That's all,
frozen.
Shane. That's all. It was just kind of like just.
yeah, you're still cut. Hopefully you're not cutting out anymore. You cut out for a little bit there, so hopefully you're back. Oh, he's frozen now.
Yeah.
He'll come. He'll come back.
So
Yeah.
Michael, it's your show now.
Yeah, no, yeah. Just to build on what Shane was saying, there are those. There's the crisis supplement. There's nutritional supplements, and I know Shane
Mhm.
looked at some of these when he was minister. There's a whole host of these discretionary, relatively modest additions. How those came about historically were and this goes back decades and decades and decades as we were
Mhm.
building social assistance programs across the country. Um, you know, Welfare administrators appreciated that one way to improve programs, besides saying raise the rates, which of course always gets asked, and of course
Mhm.
Yeah.
most governments, most time, finance and treasury departments say we haven't got that kind of money. So
Yeah.
you look at more specific elements within the overall program and say, well, what about for funerals, or what about for transportation, or what about for clothing, or
All the
what about
stuff.
for additional medication or health supplements or something
Yeah.
with it, and it's what my father, who was a salesman, say. If you can't talk about the big bucks, talk about the nickels and dimes and quarters, and they add up.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes, and those can be the achievable ones during tighter times when the general conversation across the government is ministers are being asked for reductions or freezes. You can still push the string a bit if you could say, look, here's this health supplement. It hasn't been looked at for 15 years, or here's this emergency benefit. It hasn't been looked at for donkey's years.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not a big ask, but it's going to really improve the lives of, 1,700 people instantly,
Mhm.
or whatever. And you can come up with that's kind of the micro advocacy, right? It's very targeted. And as Shane
Mhm.
said, the Disability Alliance of BC, the Plan Institute, the Neil Belanger's with his organization at BCANS, they're the cold face of these programs. They know
Mhm.
the nitty gritty. They know the nuts and bolts, and they could have a conversation that's very different from what we were talking about earlier, which is the big strategic conversation in Ottawa or nationally about
Yeah.
federal provincial relations and all that. This is very on the ground, very meaningful, and there is expertise there in these groups. And a similar conversation, like Shane was saying about asking Minister Robertson, what's his vision? You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
go to Minister Malcolmson and say, look, we appreciate that these are tough times, but where's some opportunities? Some very
Mhm.
strategic, targeted, meaningful. Um, some might call them irritants, even because there may
Yeah.
be paperwork, and which actually and then may actually result in some savings for the department administratively. So you find some win-wins there. It's
Well,
not just about more money for people in the
you
community;
you
it's also
just
about improving the systems.
yeah, you just hit the nail on the head there, Michael, because I was gonna say, like, we were talking about
Mm,
getting rid of the shelter amount
mhm.
earlier, and I just think if to carry that over, if you actually got rid of all the supplement that's hidden away, that's kind of gated, it's gated money, right? if you got rid of that and just however much money it would be, like $10 more on a check, if you did that instead, I think there's quite a bit of money that's locked away behind or gated behind there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, would it be worth it to just get rid of the supplement and just add it to the check and have one check and not the
The shelter.
shelter and then the supports, like just keep it simple and get rid of all the gated money and just
Administration.
have the government set whatever money they want to put on the check, but like just get rid of all the stuff that's hidden, because as you kind of alluded to, Michael, like when you have all this gated money, like it requires manpower to administer all that gated money as well, right? And so maybe if you didn't have all the gated money, you'd have less manpower. You needed to a lot to that as well. So
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
allocate the current revenue that's actually within, rather than asking for more, because then you actually utilize it on. I mean, because there's a lot of check marks that need to be checked off. Yep. Did they access this, or are they eligible for this? And rather than just putting it on, and then having
I don't know. It's
couple points.
6 of one, half done in it.
Yeah.
There's an attractive simplicity to that, and it's like tax reform when people say, let's just have one tax and simplify or one check. The reason why we have these in part is human diversity. Even within the disability community, there is a variety. So there's equity issues of, well, if we all gave you a flat amount, there'd still be people within 6 months or a year from now, Neil, that would come back and say, I've got an additional or extraordinary costs. Sure. And then the second reality would be there's still going to be emergencies. So no matter what bureaucracy or policy we come up with, that's just the human condition. So again, let's have a conversation about it. There may be room for simplicity, but I don't approach this thinking that we'd be able to eliminate or want to eliminate some of these supplements, because I think they're a response to human diversity and complexity. And secondly, there's always going to be emergencies through no fault of people's own circumstances. And I wouldn't want to victimize people by saying, you should have figured this all out. We gave you the check. So I don't know what Jane's thoughts are, but I think, can the system be simplified? Yeah. Can we eliminate them? I don't know if that's the right conversation to be having, quite frankly.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
That's all good. I agree with Michael on this. I think kind of let's find a one size fits all for people is a challenge. Everybody is different. People's needs are different. And we know that if you did kind of say, okay, we're going to take all of those supports and turn it into an extra 25 or 50 or whatever it is dollars on a check, that would be good. But it wouldn't be very long before people with real needs would be coming and saying, I have other needs that aren't met by this, and I need some extra help. So I think that's a hard one to do. And especially for things, if you think that money is needs-based money, you want to keep to a minimum the requirement to justify it and minimize that as much as you can. But it's still going to be based on that. So I don't think that solves our problem.
Yeah, maybe probably just a few of the items, maybe to tweak it, but not all of it. Like maybe just
absolutely
like say you want a food crisis supplement. Okay, that'd be easy to do. Just pop that on there or whatever. But there's a lot of other ones where maybe you have to go through dialysis or diabetes, like a lot of different other conditions that you need now kind of say this is the why I need those supplements. But the other ones are kind of basic where they could probably just pop it on. And that could be something that we could have a discussion with the minister on, just to kind of tweak things accordingly. I mean, I know some people are opting out of like a bus pass, and then they're using the money to get by, and then they go without transportation. I mean, I think that's a good system, Shane. Like when we had that the bus pass fiasco thing way back. but I think a lot of people are actually are opted into it too, right? Because they need their transportation to get to and from. And again, it's about, accessibility, being close to the stores that they need, and having housing built around the hub, around around the transportation, and making that it's affordable. I think it's kind of intertwining all these things, and the healthcare too, because like it puts less strain on the healthcare. And I mean, so many things to advocate for. But
And
I
so little time, Brent. We've come to the end of the hour already.
I know how fast it goes by, right? And but one of the things that I always advocate for is just about the housing. Is the number one is that sure, I'd love to see the rates increase, but I think getting people the access to subsidized housing is the number one key, because now they're going to have more money in their pocket, which rather than asking, needing an increase, not saying don't, people watching this going, no, are you saying don't give us an increase? What I'm saying is, yes, I mean, when the government can give an increase, but what I'm saying is get people access to subsidized housing, so now they got more money in their pocket. And that's like it getting an increase, right? So now you put that money back in to the community, wherever it may go. And now it's the same thing as paying high market rent, but now you're paying subsidized and you're getting all that extra money. So it's like getting a rate increase.
No, it is.
And the rates to inflation too.
Making life more affordable for people can be done in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
And I would agree with you that I think the top of the list probably is safe, secure, affordable housing.
Yeah.
And if you can figure out how to keep people safe and secure housing that they can afford, the rest of things can begin to get dealt with.
Yeah. And find the rates to inflation too.
Yeah. Well, as just to connect two nice themes there, Brent, that you've been touching on today. Housing we historically think of as a great way to, prime the pump of the economy, right? It's a great way to stimulate through housing construction, jobs. It stimulates all sorts of trades. It's a great way to reinvest in communities. Shane's also pointed out it's a profound social determinant of health and well-being. Address housing. Along with others, but it's a virtuous priority, housing, because it speaks to both economic growth and prosperity, but also social security and justice and decency. And so, when you can package that together like that and make that a convincing argument, and people say, yeah, I can see both sides of that equation. I can see the economic arguments. I can see the social. Then you've got a better song to sing. And be in harmony with other groups and move that forward. And just one last thing. I think next spring or summer, the BC Accessibility Act, which again Shane was very much involved with, is coming up for its first review. I think independent review. And so that's an opportunity for the sector to think about what its experience has been so far under the legislation, what issues it wants to kind of raise and move forward. So in addition to all the stuff we've been talking about today, there's one on the radar that's coming that I think is quite important and significant for you and your listeners. So I think you probably could do some nice shows on that heading into the spring, and probably you'll invite Shane back, I would suspect.
Oh, absolutely.
I think, that's a great point, Michael. And it's coming up for review, and there's lots more that could be done with that legislation. And it would be a great place to step off the conversation about accessibility and inclusion, and what does that mean for persons with disabilities, and how do you make that real? And things like housing and affordability questions are a big part of accessibility and inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would, in the spring, have both of you join back on that topic.
Well, this is fun. It's been a while to have you both on at the same time.
What is the stats though? Do Michael and Shane, do you know the stats, like how many people are in market housing approximately? I know we usually go with 74% are in market housing, and 26% have access to some kind of subsidized housing.
I don't know.
Numbers have changed or not? I think it's pretty well steady on that number. I think it's
a lot that
But
well, as Shane said, when you look at Canada, I remember I I wrote about housing back in the 80s and went to international conferences on housing policy in Europe. And in those days, it was about 7% of the housing stock in Canada was social or nonprofit or co-op.
Oh, wow.
93% was market. And when you told that to Europeans, they were kind of stunned because
Yeah,
they have far larger and robust history and segments of co-op, public housing, social housing. You know, in that way, we're very North American. We're like the Americans in that we have relied very heavily on a private sector market approach to housing. And okay, that's where we are. That's who we are. But we did allow the contribution of the social, non-market, co-op, nonprofit shrink. And it was because of key political decisions made by certain governments over the last 30 years. And in many ways, we walked away from it. And a lot of the housing and homelessness challenges now are we need to continue to invest in housing. You can't stop it. I mean, with our immigration and population growth, this, I think it's dawned on Canadians, this is not, it's like you don't stop repairing the roads or the bridges. I mean, this is part of the infrastructure. You have to do it. And it's not just a have to, you should do it. It's an important thing to do. It's about opportunity and inclusion and accessibility and all those good things too. So anyway, before I forget, I wanted to say happy holidays to you all. And all the best for the new year, guys. This has been great. It's been fun.
Yes. Happy holidays, guys. And it's been great to have a chance to yak.
Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to both of you, and season's greetings, and definitely have you back on in the new year in the spring when that accessibility announcement comes out.
Looking forward to it.
And
good luck with your Canucks.
Great.
They'll need it.
Next year.
They need
next year.
Good to see y'all.
Take
care. Bye.
Okay, guys.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast, and have a great day.